Frank Bruni has written about virtually everything on the pages of the New York Times. In his latest book, the target is the race to get into the elite schools. It's called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, an antidote to the college admissions media. And the author himself now joins me. Frank, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So the title pretty much tells it all, but not all. Fill in the blanks. What's the major thesis of your work?
Well, the major thesis of this is we right now are kids, parents, unbelievably anxious like never before about getting into the most selective schools with the lowest acceptance rates. And they behave as if that's going to be the whole future. It's make or break, do or die. And what the book says is really something that's obvious, but that we've forgotten, which is that you travel to success down many different kinds of paths. The high school moment when an admissions committee judges you is just one moment in a long life, and it's just not going to have as profound an effect on your happiness and career as we're making it like it is.
You're not saying, or are you saying, the elite brand doesn't help throughout life? You're just saying that you can do quite well even without it,
I'm saying the elite brand does not help as much or as certainly as we're all behaving like it does.
Okay, for all of the dubious souls out there, let's do the Fortune 500 stats that you did. Tell us about the leaders of the 10 big ones.
When I was looking at it, if you looked only at the top 10 companies in the Fortune 500, and if you looked at the CEOs of those 10 companies, only one of them had an undergraduate degree from a selective Ivy League caliber institution, only one. If you went to the top 100, you found that maybe close to a third of them had gone to some kind of selective school, not necessarily the Ivy League. But that left 2/3 who'd gone to schools that don't make the heart go pitter-patter.
Okay, let's Marco Rubio's in the race today. We know Ted Cruz is a Princeton kid and then a Harvard law school. We know Hillary Clinton, Wellesley, and then Yale Law School.
Of course you do.
How about the rest of the Republican field?
Marco Rubio, University of Florida. Chris Christie, University of Delaware. And it goes on and on like that. Scott Walker, Marquette, and he didn't graduate. We only talk about the schools of politicians when those schools are the gilded ones. And then with the other politicians, we mention nothing as if it's irrelevant to their success. Chris Christie will tell you that the sort of people skills he picked up at the University of Delaware are key to where he is today. Marco Rubio would probably tell you the same at the University of Florida.
He learned to be rude to people at the University of Delaware? Is
well,
that
maybe people skills wasn't the best way to put it.
So your hope, I assume, is the facts will set you free. Is that not? Is that
the facts will set you free?
Will they set you free?
I think they do.
But if the thing is not about the facts, if it's about the prestige, the competition, the emotion, the something, the letting your kid down kind of thing. How do you get by that?
If you want to lash yourself and your kid to that, fine. But we're in an era where some of these schools have acceptance rates of 5%, 6%. If you're going to hold that up to your kid as the only thing that matters, you're dooming your kid in most circumstances to heartache and disappointment. And you're telling them a partial truth. You're telling them that to be successful in life, they have to travel that path. It's just not true.
Okay, so where does the bulk of the blame go? Is it the guidance counselor? Is it the college? Is it the parent? Is the kid? Is it a mix? Where's the primary blame fall?
It's all of us. I don't blame the guidance counselors. I think they would like to do this in a better fashion. But parents are too invested in status, and they're passing that down to their kids. Colleges are exacerbating this by drumming up applications.
Yeah, explain this. I've never heard this before, what they do.
Colleges want you to apply, even if there's no chance you'll get in, because the more applications they get, the more people they reject, the lower their acceptance rate is, and we all buy into it by looking at a low acceptance rate and saying, that's a school I really want to go to. That's worth getting into.
So it's like a bait and switch kind of thing.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so you also talk beautifully about how badly the kids learn to want this thing. And my favorite piece is, I think it was a young woman who talks about how in her application to college, she talks about how it's a urination story. My apologies to the people at home. Can you give us the...
Kids are so desperate to stand out, and they're so convinced they have to really kind of dig deep to stand out in the application process that one applicant to Yale wrote an essay about how she got so involved in intellectual conversations that once when she was chatting with a favorite teacher and she had to go to the bathroom, rather than interrupt the conversation, she peed on herself. She thought this would impress the admissions officers at Yale.
I'd take her, wouldn't you?
Yale did not take her.
They did not take her.
Yale did not take her.
Despite that story. So you also go on to say that sometimes winners, in quotes, end up being losers. That kids, I mean, we know this here better than any place.
And vice versa.
The Harvards and the MITs. There was a story in the Globe a couple of weeks about 2 suicides in March alone at MIT because of the stress, that sort of thing. What do you?
I just came back from Palo Alto, where there's been a rash. Yeah, where there's been a rash in the high school there, which is a high-pressure high school. There's been a rash of suicides by train. We're talking like more than 8 in the last 5 years, last 5 or 6 years. We have to really ask some serious questions about what we do to kids when we put this kind of pressure on them.
Okay, let's let's have a little balance here. Matt Levin, we talked about him on Boston Public Radio today. Tell us about his parents, who were clearly the outliers in this thing.
They're from Long Island, right outside New York City, a community, very high-pressure community. As he was waiting to hear back from the Ivies, they saw how revved up he was, they saw how anxious he was, they wrote him a letter, and they sealed it, and they gave it to him before the acceptances or rejections came back, and said, we want you to know we wrote this before. And the letter basically said, our love for you, our pride in you, our belief in your future does not hinge at all on whatever these notices say. Acceptance, rejection, you're still the son we believe in, you're still the son we love, and just do not look at this as anything but one juncture in a long life.
And he was really upset when he got rejected. Then he read the letter, and then all of a sudden, did you weep when you read the thing? I did.
Since it came into my inboxes, I've read the letter 20 times, and every time I get teary.
20 for 20.
It's a beautiful thing that they did, and it's something every parent should consider.
So the cure for the disease is fact, is that ultimately the success, however you define it.
The cure for this is common sense. I mean, we know that everybody blooms at a different stage of life. We know that the kinds of metrics that impress a college admissions committee aren't necessarily the runestones for future success. All of this is common sense, which we throw out the window when we get revved up by Ivy League admissions and all this sort of stuff.
I plan to bloom actually any day.
I'm waiting for my bloom.
I think yours is coming too.
I think it's around the corner. Yeah.
So today when you're on Boston Public Radio with us today, I mentioned some criticism of you that have been leveled by the head of the Family Research Council. I called you a fascist because your Easter column talking about some anti-gay bigotry in certain pockets of Christianity. You said you'd never heard of the criticism, correct?
Well, I mean, I've heard of the family.
Right, but you hadn't heard of the criticism.
Well, I mean, I get tons of criticism whenever
No, but I mean that particular piece.
That I was called a fascist?
Yeah.
No, but it doesn't surprise me.
Okay, well, let me talk.
This is a religious organization so fervent, or whatever you want to call it, that they kind of think we're all irredeemable sinners. You know, I could look at them and say, I think you're the fascist.
Well, I wanted to not level, but mention another criticism. Have you heard of the criticism Barney Frank leveled at you the other day? Not exactly the Family Research Council?
He's been going around everywhere volunteering that he didn't like my review of this book.
He did not. Now, here is a little piece. Barney Frank wrote this book called Frank. And it's about his life in and out of politics and his life. And here is part of the Frank Bruni review of this book. And by the way, it's basically, I think, quite positive. And you say there's resistance to intimate detail and an apparent allergy to sentiment that are often frustrating. Says almost nothing about met or unmet romantic longings, of whether he's dating or having sex, of how badly or not he wants to. And here's how Barney Frank responds on some.
I know, he has a great little soundbite he's invented. He wanted 50 Shades of Barney.
He did say 50 Shades of Barney, but he says...
That's about the 100th time he said that.
But wait a second, here's a gay man, Frank Bruni, writing about another gay man, and essentially saying, you can't just write a serious book or even a humorous book about politics. You got to tell me how much sex you're getting. How do you respond to
I respond to that by saying, how does he tease all of that out of one line of the review? The review said, and I stand by this, that the book is very, very impersonal, that it's dry, it's impersonal. And he sets it up at the beginning as saying, like, I'm going to talk about these two desires that were in conflict. I was a gay man and I wanted a life in politics, and these things seem to be on a collision course. And then for the first 100 pages, he constantly makes reference to being in the closet, but doesn't tell you, like, is he hurting because of that? Is he frustrated by it? That's what I'm saying. It's a completely coherent and inevitable criticism. Barney didn't like the review and is choosing to make a soundbite out of it with this 50 Shades of Barney stuff.
It's very unusual. None of us have ever been criticized by Barney Frank, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, he's just a font of human kindness.
Frank Bruni, it's a great book.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much.